All right, so I just want to remind you that when we say muscle cell, we could easily say muscle fiber, and it means the same thing. A muscle fiber is a muscle cell. We can use those things interchangeably. Now, since in a muscle fiber or a muscle cell, I should have the organelles that a regular cell has, I'm just highlighting ones that maybe have a different name or that are slightly different than your average animal cell. The first one is myoglobin. It is a protein, and it's a pigment protein, which means it's giving color, just like chlorophyll is a pigment that's giving color to leaves. And its job is to store oxygen. So we know that your muscles, because they're going to do cell respiration when they contract, require some oxygen. And so it makes sense that they have a way to store this. Now, because it's a pigment, it has a lot to do with the color of your muscles. So next weekend, when you're having Thanksgiving turkey, if that's something that you do, and you say, I like white meat, or you say, I like dark meat, you're actually saying, I like myoglobin, or I don't like myoglobin. Because that's what's making it different color. The sarcolemma is the membrane of the muscle cell. And you'll see these two bits of words. The sarco part, I already told you, means muscle. It actually means like flesh husk or something silly like that. But the lemma part at the end of it is used commonly to talk about the membrane of a cell. For example, membrane around nervous cells is called a neurolemma. And so that's a piece of word that'll come back again. A membrane does the same thing regular cell membranes do. It's selectively permeable, which means it can control the entry and exit of substances in and out of the muscle cell, much like a cell membrane that you learned about in Science 10 would have done. The other thing I'll just mention, it's the same sort of structure as a membrane would have. It has phosphates and lipids and a bilayer. So it's just a membrane. It just happens to be the membrane of a muscle cell. Similarly, sarcoplasm is the cytoplasm of a muscle cell. So it's the jelly-like fluid that's in the cell. It suspends all the organelles. Things can diffuse through it. The sarcoplasmic reticulum, so if I look, I see the word reticulum. You might remember learning about the endoplasmic reticulum when you took Science 10 and you talked about cell parts. The sarcoplasmic reticulum, unlike your generic endoplasmic reticulum, has a very specific function. And it has to do with calcium ions. Muscle cells require calcium to contract, which is something that a lot of people don't know. Hey, you think calcium, ooh, I need that for my bones and my teeth, but you actually need calcium for muscle contraction as well. And the sarcoplasmic reticulum is an important place that calcium is coming from. Now the last bit is about myofibrils, and there are two subcategories. Myofibrils are the little fibers inside of a muscle cell that move around so that your muscles can contract. For now, we'll just name them. The thick one is called myosin, and the thin one is called actin. And as we talk about how your muscles contract, we'll get more specific about what each of those things do. I've sent this e-card to someone before, not Mrs. O. She would be like, haha, come to work, that's not funny. But a previous boss that I had in a previous job, I sent them this email. I'm not coming to work today because I did squats yesterday, and I was telling the truth. That was actually my reason. I literally could not stand up. You're not doing squats today, but you will do wall sits, which uses a lot of the same muscles. Now this is the only slide of notes that we need to look at, and when we're done with this, we'll start the activity. We are talking about fast twitch and slow twitch fibers, and so I put one on one side, one on the other. Now these are fibers, which means these are types of muscle cells, and I just want to reiterate that these are types of skeletal muscle. So in the beginning, we talked about 3 types of cells: cardiac, smooth, or skeletal muscle. These are 2 subcategories of skeletal muscle. And skeletal muscle is, of course, the kind that we're going to talk about in detail in this chapter. Now, it's purposeful that on the left I put a picture of a bodybuilding guy, and on the right I put a picture of a marathon runner, because those are really illustrative examples of the type of activity that you would do with a fast twitch muscle versus a slow twitch muscle. Fast twitch muscles are for power. They're also for things that are rapid, in other words, things that don't take a lot of time. So lifting a really heavy weight once, that's fast twitch muscles. Slow twitch muscles are endurance muscles. They're for things that happen over a long period of time, but perhaps are not particularly difficult each time you do them. So, is it hard to jog one step? Not really. I hope not anyways. But when you jog one step over and over and over and over again for like 8 hours because you're running a marathon, that's endurance. Now, endurance does not have to be the length of a marathon. Endurance just means you're doing something very repetitively. So it would be the difference, let's say if you're working out, in lifting a really heavy weight, say 5 or 6 times, or lifting a really light weight, maybe 20 or 30 times. The heavier the thing you're lifting, the more fast twitch muscle fibers you're using, because now you're thinking about power. Slow twitch are all about endurance. Now, what's different between them? Well, a fast twitch muscle has little or no myoglobin, so they're quite light in color. So that's the white meat. Slow twitch fibers are dark in color because of myoglobin. And so myoglobin is a pigment. Pigments give color. If I have more of it, then it's darker. Myoglobin has kind of a reddish, brownish color to it. Now the third point is really related to the second. Since fast twitch fibers have little to no myoglobin, and myoglobin is where they get oxygen from, fast twitch muscle fibers really depend on anaerobic energy generation. That means glycolysis and then fermentation, but no Krebs cycle, no electron transport chain. Slow twitch fibers depend on aerobic generation, and that's because they have oxygen because they have myoglobin. Fast twitch muscles then fatigue. There's only so much you can do if you're only doing anaerobic respiration, right? There's only so much energy that you can produce. So a fast twitch muscle cannot perform its job over a long period of time. It's short little bursts. Slow twitch muscle fibers resist. They're not impervious to fatigue, okay? They're not Superman here. They're going to run out of energy eventually, but it'll take way longer because they have all of this myoglobin, so they have lots of oxygen available to continuously do aerobic cellular respiration. So fast twitch fibers are good for bursts, and I put a couple examples. Obviously, lifting weights would be an example. Sprinting is a good example of fast twitch fibers. Swinging a racket or a stick. So any sport where you take a shot really quickly, that's fast twitch fibers because you're doing it really quickly and we would assume with quite a bit of power relative to other movements that you might make. Whereas slow twitch fibers are for anything that's prolonged. Generally, a slow twitch fiber is for something that's not super difficult, but that you're going to do for a really long period of time. So jogging or running would be the really the best example here. It could be for walking for a long period of time. That would count for a slow twitch fiber as well. We're going to see on the assignment that we're going to do that I ask you about intermediate muscle fibers, because in the real world there's not just really dark and really light ones. There's this whole spectrum of types of muscle that you have, so that you know intermediate muscles are kind of like one and kind of like the other. They don't have no myoglobin, but they don't have tons. They have an intermediate amount. They don't only depend on anaerobic or aerobic, they use both of them. So you do have muscle fibers that are in the in-between part for things that maybe are a little bit hard or where you need a little bit of endurance for them.